Gentrification, food deserts, online shopping, and foot traffic. What obstacles obstruct the path to our community's sustainability? What improvements are needed? Come walk the road to revival with us as we explore these crucial questions. In each episode, we'll discuss topics relating to the New Kensington Revitalization Project. Join in as we take you to the destinations of understanding this complex path. The Road to Revival podcast is sponsored by Passages in Prose LLC. I'm Julia, and here's your podcast hosts, Devin, Zach, and Zach.
Welcome to Road to Revival. Thank you for joining in for our first season. We're your hosts, Devin, Zach, and Zach. We're grateful to connect with you. Before the podcast begins, we'd like to introduce our talented production team. Lily, our executive producer, Julia, our assistant producer, and Surgeon, our tech producer. This week's episode focuses on artificial intelligence, and our guest is Steve Leonard, Operations and Program Manager at the Digital Foundry. Now pass it on to Zach for some more info on Steve.
Steve Leonard has been a practicing educator, industrial and designer, innovator, and engineer for over 35 years. He has worked in a variety of industries, including industrial equipment, automotive and commercial vehicles, aerospace, defense, children's toys, medical and surgical equipment, and fast-moving consumer products, which is a lot. He has demonstrated leadership in design, development, design for manufacture, and engineering and project management, having delivered over $3 billion in value to the organizations he has served. He is the operations and program manager for the Digital Foundry, Penn State, New Kensington's new digital manufacturing demonstration and educational facility. Steve is responsible for developing and managing the workforce development programs designed to provide education for secondary and post-secondary students, reskilling for unemployed/underemployed and dislocated workers, and upskilling of employed and advanced manufacturing engineering staff and manufacturing leadership throughout southwestern Pennsylvania. He was instrumental in helping to obtain the seed funding needed for Penn State New Kensington's vision to revitalize the region. Previously, Steve worked for Alcoa/Arconic at the Alcoa/Arconic Technology Center as the senior innovation leader in Arconic's Growth and Insights Office. He was responsible for orchestrating front-end innovation programs for Arconic and facilitating new growth programs for the aerospace, automotive, commercial transportation, and building construction markets, identifying and initiating over $25 million in growth opportunities. He has been awarded several technical and officer awards for his design and technical innovation, and is a recipient of other design recognitions for consumer products and surgical equipment. Steve holds a Bachelor of Industrial Design for Syracuse University and a Master of Science in New Product Development from Northwestern University. He is also a recipient of over 56 U.S. and international patents. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, pleasure to be here.
All right. So this is our topic for today, artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is becoming increasingly relevant. This episode will focus on how AI development will affect local and global manufacturing. So I guess we can start about what artificial intelligence is, some history behind it. So this term was coined at a conference at Dartmouth in 1956. A group of the early computer scientists got together and they kind of posed this question of whether we can simulate human intelligence with machines. And when you're looking at really early computer science in the first programming languages, it was very basic inputs in getting a computer to execute those functions. And now we're seeing that we've built on that a lot more. It is very impressive what we can do with computers now. What's your perspective, Doran?
That's me. So it's no surprise AI is going to shape the future. It does a lot. Really, it's really important. I think it's interesting to see how it's going to grow and really all of what it's going to do. It's going to be really big, basically. But we need to make sure that as it develops ethically and doesn't develop too quick, hurt people in the process, anything like that. Want to make sure everything's good. But one of my concerns is about the replacement of the human workforce, such as like artists just kind of getting replaced and stuff. But I think that if we're smart about it, hopefully threaten. So now let's get into some questions. Let's start with you, Zach, other Zach.
How will the manufacturing of AI impact New Kensington? How will it affect how we do things? And
Well, it's already impacting New Kensington, but it's very much at a very simple level. So artificial intelligence is sometimes related or referred to as machine learning. There are simple algorithms that you currently see now, such as lights that can actually sense and understand when a vehicle is there and automatically change its timer to allow the traffic light to switch. There are other aspects where AI is probably used, like in cameras. Some organizations have cameras outside that are watching things, but it's at a very rudimentary level. Okay, so what I see happening going into the future is there's going to be more and more of these, what I would call intelligent systems that can recognize things. The visual part of recognition, such as visual sensors, recognizing someone's face or recognizing, let's say, shapes or sounds, that's been around for a while. And a computer can store and log that information and store it in its memory and have access to it to be able to determine if this individual is safe and okay to come in, or this one's not, such as face recognition. You may see some of that. As far as how some of the other things will get impacted, you're going to see a lot of innovation opportunity, not only in New Kensington, but it'll have an impact on New Kensington, such as, how often do I need to change the garbage in the alleyway if I'm a trash collector, or how I can monitor safety issues or concerns, or let's say where there's crime. Cameras can do that, but as well as having everything sort of kind of collated into the 911 system or something like that. I'm not trying to be too vague about it, but there will be impacts. As it impacts what I do at the Digital Foundry, AI plays a big role presently in education, specifically in robotics, but also in other things too. So we have showcased in our facility a very simple automation system created by the seniors at the electromechanical engineering degree program at Penn State and Kensington, that actually recognizes using a simple camera, but it's got a machine learning and a very basic AI algorithm in there that recognizes shape and color, and in some cases orientation, as it's going down the conveyor, and it knows exactly when to shift a solenoid to push it into a bucket for that particular color and that particular shape. Very basic, but it's very effective. And it's not perfect, but considering that the camera cost less than $100 and it still has that capability, is pretty impressive.
So yeah,
I was actually going to say, my bad. I accidentally said 25 million. I meant 250 million when I was introducing you to the bio. So I apologize for that.
Okay.
Which I guess, as the whole AI doesn't make as many mistakes as people do a lot of the time.
yeah.
At least
Way to
not
go.
what.
No,
That's fine.
We should replace you with an AI next time.
It'll be all right. I'll be all right with
Yeah.
This is his last podcast.
that. Sorry, guys.
Yeah. So I guess on a broader scale, how would you say it's affected other cities where AI has been developed?
Traffic patterns. Very interesting. I just got on my feed from LinkedIn about how different designs and traffic patterns can affect the speed and the traffic flow in an organization. Really fascinating link. It shows all the different kind of interchanges, let's say for two major highways, all the different ways you can create on-ramps and off-ramps, and it monitors it and it shows it in a way that through camera, you can actually monitor and have systems that can determine maybe this needs to be designed this way. It's sort of like a concept called generative design, where it's going through so many different calculations and permutations on a product to make it lighter, stronger, and better.
Yeah.
And it'll create it in a way that doesn't necessarily take into consideration can it be manufactured or not. But traffic patterns is a big one. Probably going to be important in the area of aerospace, specifically in commercial airline traffic patterns and things like that. I can also see it having an impact in a lot of particular different areas where it can be a helper or enabler, like in a restaurant. It could be one of these things where it can kind of monitor the how many people are coming to the restaurant, or who's ordering different things. A lot of that's done by hand, and they have to take the data and they have to analyze the data by hand. But if all that can be taken by a computer that can figure all that out for you, that's a very good use of applying artificial intelligence.
It's a very left brain, right?
Yeah, I suppose. It's very analytical. It's very AI will work to the point that the programmer, who was a human, will program it. It's not going to create its own programs
Right.
necessarily, at least yet. Now, I could be mistaken, maybe they are, but think of it this way. Humans think at a sentient level. Sentient means where we have the ability to make decisions, know what's right or wrong in society. People say we have a soul. I believe that. We all have souls. We have beliefs. Aside from a couple of animals, we're the only creatures, unfortunately, who kill just for the sake of it. But that's going to be a bit of a challenge for AI. I mean, think about all the computations your brain makes. And I can't remember the number because I'm not an expert in this, but I think it's onwards of what, 3 billion? Yeah, something crazy like that. But yeah, you could get a computer to work and make all those calculations, but it will only know what it's been initially programmed to do. Now, it can take in more and more information, whether it's information specifically set up for restaurants or specifically set up for traffic patterns or for emergency conditions or for criminal activities and stuff like that. But it's not going to all of a sudden become like Terminator.
Yeah.
Right.
That's good.
I don't think Terminator is at all possible going into the future, unless you can figure out how, like the Star Trek episode from The Next Generation, you can take the positronic brain, as they call it, or the engrams, and kind of put emotions into a computer, an artificial intelligence device. Now they have robots or simulations that can show a robot that smiles, that gets confused, get that.
I hate those.
But when it goes from there to, okay, how do you critically think and make the right decision? That's where it starts to get difficult. And so you have to have people programming in all the different variables that they go through.
Next question. So how exactly is AI developed?
Well, it starts with data and sensors. Just like anything, it has an input and an output. It has to sense something. I mean, we're the same way. If we lived in a non-sensory environment, we wouldn't think of it that way. In other words, with solitary confinement. No light, no dark, just you wouldn't develop. You're not stimulating your brain. This is part and parcel of how the digital transformation, or what we call the fourth industrial revolution, or Industry 4.0, is coming out. It's a mix between cyber and physical. Okay, cyber being the digital side, physical being like equipment. And in manufacturing, with sensor technology, whether it is a vibration sensor, or it is a light sensor, or a temperature sensor, or other kinds of different sensors, a visual sensor, and there's many out there, accelerometers. You can take that information as an input, put it through some form of computation or algorithm, and then you can create analytics from that. All right. But it's very important to understand that collecting data and just saying, I've got the data and I'm going to figure out my problem is unfortunately a dogma that seems to be around a lot, and that's not how it works. Collecting data without any understanding of the context, without any understanding of the conditions and the situation by which that data is collected. Let's say I have a machine tool that's making, let's say, a business card holder, and it comes in It has the tool, it starts to spin, it moves over, starts to cut the tool, and goes through it, finishes, it comes up and it sprays water on it to clean it off. And it goes in and comes in and does another part. Those are all steps in a procedure when you're machining a part. Now, if you just collect the data from the beginning to the end and you don't understand the context of why maybe there was a what I call vibration occurring here or over here, you could say, well, we got vibration issues all over the place. That's not the case. Maybe that's normal. It could be that you're going to have a vibration here, which is normal. But at the point when which you're trying to control and maintain quality, and you've got a vibration issue causing what they call chatter, and it makes a rough surface that doesn't look right and has to be smooth, you have to know exactly where that is in the process. A little bit of a complex way to describe it, but you have to understand in which context of that data is created.
Makes sense. I guess part of that is sort of one of the differences between humans and AI, as you mentioned, and that when you're sentient, I guess, there's really more data for you. Like you can understand data in different contexts, not just in one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not an expert in this area, just from what I've read and seen, and I'm more of an expert in how things like machine learning are going to impact manufacturing and such. But we can absorb so much sensory input. A machine can do the same thing, but unless it's set up with millions of different ways to take that input and use it in different processes, it's the difference between a pin and a huge hay bale or a huge mountain of hay. How you find that pin, and then the hay is so much bigger. We have the ability to maintain and think about multiple things at once, whereas a computer or a system can only do certain things at one time. Now, maybe they can expand that. They'd have to put more sensors on it. You'd have to figure out the computation behind it. There's still not the basis for this thing to sort of figure out and create its own experiences that I know of. I could be wrong. They might be doing great things. I'd like to know what you guys think.
I think AI seems super helpful. Yeah, I don't think it's going to necessarily be like big Terminator thing, because we don't have, I don't know either. I don't think we have the capabilities of AI kind of building upon itself in a way that isn't what we initially described it to be.
Like the judicial system and
Yeah,
some AI racially profiles,
Yeah.
things like that, which
Yeah.
isn't okay, obviously.
get crime statistics. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
going to do some crazy stuff with that. But yeah, I think that AI seems really good, specifically for optimization, as you were talking about, right? We have data science fields where we're analyzing data and seeing what the best route is to take, which can be helpful for cities. I was talking to someone from CME over the summer. He works in operations management and he uses a lot of computer science and AI when describing patterns for, I think he worked with a firehouse in Pittsburgh and how optimizing routes to get to certain places in the city. It was really cool. So
Let's think about that. Let's build on that. For you. Firehouse optimizing patterns. They look at things, they go in, they take the data with their experience, this human experience. They could harken back to a situation that happened 6 years ago, or they can pull up information, say we had the huge fire here, and this is what we learned from it. Unless that information is embedded into some kind of digital system that an AI system can get at, it would never know that. But this guy or gal would know that, and they'd be able to go in and kind of factor that in. So there's good things about humans doing data analytics and making decisions, but there are bad things too. Sometimes data is interpreted incorrectly. Some people on the conspiracy side purposely manipulate it to further a political point of view, or to do something that when you look at the ethics, you really have to ask yourself, okay, what's going on? Humans are not perfect. Many of us struggle from level of ethical lack of ethics, if you will. some to a greater degree, some to a lesser degree. And so we're only as good as our flawed humanity allows us. So we're creating artificial intelligence. Think of that.
Yeah.
So we're creating artificial intelligence that can do all this stuff automatically. Then what happens? We're going to program it, but I'm going to program it because I support this party, or I don't like people of color, or really xenophobic about the Chinese or something like that. I mean, these are just examples. When you see this stuff, then you have AI kind of like promoting your viewpoint.
Yeah.
So how do you make AI extremely objective, but still allow the humans to be able to interpret it instead of having AI make all the decisions?
I think that's one of the biggest fears for a lot of people is like, yeah, because everything people make is steeped in their experiences. Even if it's supposed to be like a separate intelligence, it still has a little bit of them in it.
Yeah. I mean, you're not going to take the human factor out of it. But I mean, like anything, you have to have some form of checks and balances. This is, do that through regulation, or do you do that through quality control, or do it through a lot of different things? But AI is going to be very impactful for our world. And it's going to help us in a lot of areas. And it's going to be scary. I mean, you heard about Chat GPT. All right. People are going to start writing papers and they're not going to put any creative effort into it because Chat GPT can do it. Okay. How does that affect the educational system? And there are a lot of people in education that are very concerned about it. However, let's flip it on the other side of the coin. What if that was used as a means to help people in developing thoughts that they have or concepts that they have, and say, okay, instead of me diving in and doing all this research, if I can maybe use Chat GPT to kind of create things that can help me figure out how to come up with an even higher concept or come up with an even better solution or improvement, then that's fine. All right. But I think Chat GPT has a lot of issues with it. They have to think through exactly how they're going to apply that. And what are your thoughts on Chat GPT?
I had a teacher write me a letter of recommendation with it. I read it, it was pretty good. So I guess, yeah, it's kind of funny. He was like, oh yeah, that letter, I didn't write it.
Well, he didn't write it or she didn't write it. And then, okay, when you find that out, it's like, I guess I'm just a number.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things I'm concerned about in our society, AI aside, and it's not just AI, it's everything. I mean, we do a lot of things in the past that were very socially oriented. Then we had the pandemic, and all of a sudden we're doing everything online. And we have these things, which conceptually could be and are useful, but what's happening is it's getting abused. And people socialize through this, which is not what a human was intended for. We're social creatures. I use it only for certain things and for things that make sense. But if I still want to talk to somebody, I'm not going to text them if they're standing right next to me.
Yeah.
It sounds like, oh, that's kind of cool, but you really want to interact with people.
Yeah.
Because that's important. So we become almost like a slave to the technology that we've created. And we need to be social, like your teacher should have gave that letter to you and not say, well, I didn't write it. I just plugged it through Chat GPT and it makes you feel sort of kind of minuscule.
Yeah.
As opposed to he picked something out that Chat GPT wouldn't find, which is like AI. It's like, okay, I happen to know that Zach asked a question, stuck it in my head, and I was really impressed by that. If he put that in there, AI would know that.
I guess I wanted to ask, how is AI learning tracked? And since we sort of went over that a little bit, I kind of also wanted to ask about, like, do you think that in the future careers regarding AI and robotics and things like that will become more exclusive? Like, we'll have more and more layers of things that we know about that. They'll become harder to learn as time goes on. What do you think about that?
Well, they're within data science. I'll focus on data science, which is looking at data, how you're collecting the data, how you're curating it, the data. In other words, where is it stored? Curating it under what conditions was the data generated? That gets at the context. how you then use the data or visualize the data, how you then engage, how you execute on the data to resolve or solve a problem. At any one of those steps, there's going to be specific career pathways. Two, there will be folks that will be doing what I would say just the collection. Others that will be doing the programming. Some that will do the analytics. Others that will do the higher end development of new software and new languages. Okay, so you've got what is the latest language out now? Working Python, other derivatives of that, plus a lot of the what they call the graphic drag and drop, like Snap.
Oh, C++, that too?
That's an old language, but it's still useful. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's been around. There will be obviously layers and tiers in that. I mean, if you look at the university system and you look at all the, I'll pick on mechanical engineering or an engineering degree. You have people that go into the research level of it that are doing breakthrough invention and discovery. And that's, going to be geared toward folks that have that learning talent or style. Everyone learns differently and everyone has a place in which they fit best. I don't know if I answered your question, but that's kind of how I look at it.
That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
I guess we also already touched on the positives to AI. How do you think in your field, in like manufacturing, how AI is going to be affecting that in the future?
Well, I think it'll be extremely effective when we start making artifacts, products, or services. It will allow a lot of the things that were done in the past by hand that had human error into it minimized. It will not eliminate it, but it will minimize a lot of it. But the thing that it won't do is it won't do what is called critical thinking and making what you would call ethical-based decisions on what it is your company needs to pursue. And also, this is important, culturally, decisions that are basically filtered through the culture of your organization. Those are things that talk about the human engagement. Culture is very much a human-to-human kind of thing. AI is going to have a hard time trying to discern all that moving forward in manufacturing. So you'll have the ability to track what let's say a piece of equipment is doing on a production line. You may be able to understand and build databases that help you create a baseline of what's good, create a baseline of what's bad, that you can discover, create a baseline of things you can't discover, but that are bad, and determine that something may look bad, but it's okay. You take all that information, and then within that database and the reams of data, you can start to piece together an algorithm in AI of some kind that can monitor all that. That right now, humans are kind of trained to look at those things. In other words, they have that institutional knowledge. And I don't mean institutional knowledge, what they learned from college, but they're within that manufacturing space, and the terms institutional knowledge and experience. They look at it and says, oh, I remember that. I remember what I had to do. And that gets into a whole nother area. How do you capture the institutional knowledge of companies when people retire, which you're having the big retirement tsunami coming? That's going to be hard to find. So there are going to be a lot of gaps on how to run things and how to make things that are not necessarily saved in a computer system.
Yeah, right.
Having come from Alcoa and Arconic, we were going through that problem. And there's a lot of things that were in people's heads, or they saved on their desktop computer that didn't go to a central storage area that was erased and disappeared. Things that could be important. In other words, what was done in the past is no longer considered bad. There's a lot of things back there that are good to know as you move forward.
So do you believe that humanity should be concerned about being replaced by AI, like workforce wise?
If you asked me that question a year and a half ago, I would have said yes. Right now, I would say no.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. For whatever reason, and this got every employer and company scratching their head that they can't find people. They cannot find people specifically in these areas where they have some technical and digital background. This is going to generate jobs. And this scenario is no different when we went from horse-drawn carriages and buggy whips to automobiles, okay? Where we went from non-computers to computers, or we went from doing everything by hand, no automation, to automation. If you look at the United States economy, it just kept growing and growing, growing, and growing, growing. This, I don't think, is going to eliminate workers. There is a sense, I sometimes wonder, the folks that are working in the area of AI, trying to make things easier for people. Okay, I get that, but having everything done automatically so that we have more time for leisure, that was something that they thought was going to happen back in the 80s and 90s, and that was, kind of automation at the time. You'd be able to go out and play golf anytime you want. Well, that's a bad thing, and I'll tell you why. We really thrive when we have goals to aim for, when we can work at something, when we can create something. That's the nature of who humans are. They like to create, they like to build. Some humans don't, they like to destroy, but we'll ignore that for now. But if you're just like not doing anything, eventually you're going to die. And I've witnessed this through people that retire. Those that can't handle it, they die, or they slowly fade away because they don't have goals. They don't have anything to look forward to. And that's very much at the heart of what humanity is all about. How can I achieve? Or how can I do this? How can I? Because we're very much built or created that way.
All right. Well, thank you for taking time for this interview. I think it's time for our closing remarks. So
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Anytime. This was fun. I think we learned a lot. So Zach, got some things to say.
I guess we'll share our 3 takeaways that we learned from our conversation. AI is a powerful tool which needs to be handled correctly and ethically. While AI can be helpful in assisting in everyday function, it should be regulated so it doesn't become detrimental, expanding on the last one. Developments in artificial intelligence can be frightening, but it should also be exciting. And I guess it's really more of a tool and how we use it that really is what's important. Capability is sort of different from sort of moral, ethical usage of something.
If I can add something into that, I saw this CBS morning news segment that you have on script. You're starting to see more of this where it says indicated that AI is not able to replace human coders. Be able to address tedious tasks, making them more satisfactory for humanity, which makes sense. Experts agree for humans to study what AI does well and seek jobs that complement AI. And that's what I believe. I think it's just another in a series of tools that will help us thrive as humans. And when I say thrive, that doesn't mean playing golf every day, unless you're a pro.
I'm pretty bad at golf.
I played golf once and I regretted it.
Yeah, I went to a driving range. Just kept hitting this one shed.
At least you're accurate.
Well, I was trying to shoot as far as I could, and the shed was like a foot away from me.
I guess that leads us to our promo. This episode is the second of 6 in our first season. Season 1 is available for your listening via several venues. Details and links will be posted across social media.
Thank you for listening in to this episode of Road to Revival with your hosts, Devin, Zach, and our guest, Steve Leonard. Additional thanks to our sponsor, Passages and Prose LLC, and our community collaborators. Keep walking with us down this path as we explore the challenges and triumphs of the New Kensington revitalization efforts. Please remember to invite your friends and family to join us. To learn more or subscribe to the newsletter, please visit www.passagesandprose.com/pages/renaissance-new-ken-press. Please join in for our next podcast. Thank you.